at this point, we can move into our main presentation, which Brendan, I think you probably are close with our next presenter and probably can give a bit of an introduction for them that would do much more justice than I would be able to. So, Brendan, if you want to go ahead.
Thanks, Andrew. So to say that we're close, I think, is a bit of an exaggeration. We are new acquaintances and hopefully going to be buddies moving forward here. We have a lot of common interests, and I see some really good opportunities. So Jeffrey Holmes is the Radio Wireless Interoperability Manager for the County of Fairfax. And he works very closely with the surrounding jurisdictions for interoperability. And I reached out to Jeff because over the years, everybody knows my interests in ham radio. And over the years, people have always asked, for more information about what happens, public safety, public service in Fairfax County from their perspective, their meaning the professionals that do this, not from an amateur perspective, but maybe how amateurs can start to work with the professionals. So without further ado, I'll let Jeffrey wow us. Welcome, Jeffrey.
As Brendan said, my name is Jeffrey Holmes. I'm the Radio Wireless Interoperability Manager for Fairfax County. I also wear another hat, I would say probably about 50% of the time as a radio system manager for the County of Fairfax. So let me start first with my history before I go into any details. This mess that I'm in all started when I was in high school. Actually, before that, let's throw my mom and blame my mom into this. So she got a scanner and would listen to that thing. So I really should probably think about how old I was. I was a young kid. I have been with a scanner ever since. And of course, that's kind of developed into two-way radio along the course as well. So my mom started listening to a scanner. Well, she had got one, started listening. So I started listening, and it became a big hobby of mine. The next thing that happened that was a life changer, she went to bingo at the local fire station, and guess who tagged along? I won $100, almost won $200, and I saw these kids walking around in uniforms. I said, "What's that all about, Mom?" And they were cadets. So another door opened up in the world of radio communications for me, and I became a volunteer in a fire and rescue. Later, to abbreviate this a little bit, in the course of my lifetime so far, I would come across different positions at the federal level, state level, and county level. And it was all in public safety. So I've stuck with public safety for all of my life. And with that being said, I have pretty much touched on every part of the band, if you would, the RF spectrum, more or less, at some point in my life, whether it be low band or now 800, even 900 megahertz at one point. So I've been able to touch everything in my lifetime. And I'm really happy with that because it helped me get to my position that I'm at now. I can address different issues with different agencies, whether it be fire and rescue, law enforcement. And by the way, I focused on law enforcement. So my background is law enforcement. I got out of the volunteer because I had to do something full time that provided benefits. So that kind of went on the back burner, and I never had time to revisit that. So anyways, I can address our different customers, if you would, that we have out there in the RF spectrum world. Fire and rescue, school security, I did that, law enforcement, and now with interoperability, I'm dealing with other agencies like the federal and state level agencies. And again, I've been there. I know what they require and what type of systems they operate on. So that sums up, how I got to this point in my life in RF and, all the different disciplines that I learned and their needs in the radio world to make me better at this position. So Radio Wireless Interoperability Manager. So I am tasked with making sure that we can all communicate. Of course, me being seated in Fairfax County, I focus on our folks and make sure they get everything they need. But I am often tasked from outside jurisdictions that need assistance in developing programming for their radio so they can communicate with our people or people that are adjacent to them outside of our county. And that's my major function. My major duty, and then the other hat that I put on is system management. And that's what we're going to get into today is the radio system. So Fairfax County, as of today, operates two 800 megahertz trunk radio systems. One is an analog system that is actually slowly being decommissioned. The other one's a P25 public safety 800 megahertz trunk radio system. We have a 20, let me focus on our analog system because that will go into our technology. The analog system is sunsetting because Motorola, and by the way, that is our primary vendor that we've been utilizing forever almost now. Therefore, we were stuck with them on this analog radio system, and they said they were going to stop supporting it. Now, if you know anything about technology and the industry out there, it's driven by new products. Obviously some of the old equipment that we have are excellent things to have on the shelf, and sometimes they are solid, but they stop making them so that we can have more bells and whistles on our devices. And that kind of drives everything. So with that being said, the analog system, Motorola is no longer supported. So if we need to support it, we need to buy parts of eBay. And that's just probably not a good business practice, especially for the citizens and visitors of Fairfax County. So we opted not to replace that radio system. And it's very rare that you see jurisdictions running two different parallel radio systems, and it's quite expensive to do that. So this will segue real quick off the side shoot. So we tried to get those users on that system to migrate to AT&T PTT, or push to talk. And it's basically a rebirth of Nextel, if you would. So we have some of our county agencies in the public service sector, which would be Fastran. Really, it's not a lot of them. Let me go into a lot of these agencies realized that they didn't want radios anymore and are using cell phones. But we have DPW, Fastran that you're using push to talk. It's on AT&T's network, uses a data connection, and it's just like a radio, with the exception that it's on a cellular looking device. So a little bit different. We try to emulate a radio as much as possible, to get them to accept it and to be familiar with it. So that's how we've offloaded some of those users on that analog system. So soon that system will be gone. Now let's focus on the meat and potatoes, and that's our P25 digital public safety radio system. So we have 20 800 megahertz frequencies assigned to this system. It's digital. It's basically P25, which is a step up from Moto Turbo. However, we do not use TDMA. Moto Turbo, as you know, you can take a frequency and have more than one talk path on one frequency. We are not using that technology on our public safety radio system. We're keeping it at FMDA, frequency multiple division access. Again, at a cost savings, and because we've found out that our system doesn't get bogged down or used as much as a TDMA system, would help with. So I will say there are other jurisdictions in the NCR, National Capital Region, Loudoun County that uses TDMA, DC, the District of Columbia. Again, they have more radio traffic. They need more talk paths, if you would. Us, for 20 channels, for the biggest jurisdiction, one of the biggest jurisdictions in the area, we only utilize our system about 30%. believe it or not. So with that being said, we just don't have a desire to move to TDMA. So that being said, here comes the kicker. We have 430 talk groups on this radio system. So that means 430 conversations if everybody was to talk on all 430 of those talk groups at one time. However, we know that doesn't happen. We know with trunking, with public safety systems, the conversation, the transmissions are different from, let's say, our amateur radio transmissions. Our amateur radio transmissions can go on. We can have a conversation about it. It's fine. It's whatever. On a public safety system, it's understood that your communications need to be brief and concise. And that's always been the case, even when it was a one frequency, analog system, especially a one frequency analog system, because you have other users on there. You have other people running calls, running traffic stops and so forth. So you did not want to tie up that frequency. So with that being said, it kind of continued on in the trunked radio world, and we still keep these conversations short and concise. And with that in mind, we're able to have 430 talk groups. And talk groups, if you don't know, that basically equates to a channel. So if you have channel 1, that would be, in my world, a talk group. And then if you have a channel 2, that would be another talk group. So we have 430 of those. But here's the kicker. On this 20-channel system, we actually don't even use all 20 of those channels. Some of them are reserved. So one of them is a control channel. So that knocks us down to 19 channels, technically, that we're using. And that control channel communicates to all those radios that are on the system, telling them what channel to be on, that they're allowed to be on the radio system, et cetera, et cetera. So that if you put in your scanner a control channel, you hear that constant sound of data or that rushing sound. That is the radio jargon that we would never understand, that only the computer understands and the radios understand. But wait, there's more. There's also other reserved channels that we don't utilize. We have 3 backup control channels. Now, the control channel is the brain of your radio system. And if you knock that out, then we go into something called fail-soft, which is it turns each one of those 20 frequencies into a conventional digital repeater. Although all 20 of these are technically repeaters, they're just tied in with the brains, with the computer system, but they're no longer trunked. They're individualized. So if the system is handicapped, it knows, okay, we're going to not allow all 430 talk groups to be active. We're only going to allow a certain amount that we program ahead of time, that we determined what we want to keep alive in case there's an emergency. And it uses each one of those 20 frequencies as a conventional repeater until we can repair the radio system. There's one more reserved channel, and that's your BSI, your base station identifier. So we know that we have to give a call sign all the time. On a trunked radio system, you think, wow, 20 frequencies, you have to do that on 20. No, the FCC said the lowest frequency in your trunked group, your trunked radios list of that you have, you can give the base station identifier. So we reserve that frequency out of our 20 so that it can transmit in Morse code the station identifier. And again, there's 3 others that are reserved for the control channel. That's just in case we get an illegal carrier or interference on that main control channel, and it has to kick it over to one of the other 3 that are reserved. So even with us not using all 20 frequencies all the time, we're still pretty good at 30%. Our users, we refer to as subscribers. So if you hear me say that, I'm referring to the radios out there in the system and the people that are using those. We have one of my jobs that I'm tasked to do is maintain the alias and IDs of every possible radio that would come onto our system. Now we have a couple of flavors of radio systems out there in the region. We have closed and we have open. And closed radio systems we have to get permission ahead of time. They have to enable or allow our radios to come onto their radio system. While others out there are open and any radio can come onto their system. However, we follow a guideline as far as our radio ID. So if any of you are on DMR, you know that you have to register for your DMR ID. And it's basically just like in the P25 public safety radio system world. However, we have it done by region. Now, my DMR ID, and I forgot it. I don't have it with me. I think it starts with 313, which I thought was funny because 313 in the public safety realm is one of the other jurisdictions that we are adjacent to. So they don't quite match up between DMR and P25 public safety, but the idea is there. So I can see an ID on a radio system and know who it is just by the format, the numbers. And we also share that in the P25 world, it's the same amount. It's 7 digits total. So I take those digits that are reported to me from other jurisdictions or from my own jurisdictions here in Fairfax County, and they give me an alias that they assign these to. So if you have police vehicle 4, then they tell me the ID. The lettering will be police vehicle number 4, for example. That's what I have to enter into the radio system, and that's what pops up on the radio consoles in the 911 center. And we do that in the public safety world because we have one of the many bells and whistles of these P25 radios is an emergency button. And I think they have that on a lot of the XPRs in the Moto Turbo DMR world as well. I think the private sector likes to use the emergency button. But that way we know if somebody hits that button, who has an emergency. If we have an alias or a name, and that ID, we know exactly who it is, where to get a hold of them, or if it's another jurisdiction, we see that and we can give them a call unless they're operating on our radio system. We have a maximum of 64K. I'm sorry, we had a maximum of 64K that all that our little radio system could handle as far as IDs/aliases. But due to the complaints from the NCR, some of the jurisdictions, and I want to assure everybody that your public safety agencies, your jurisdictions are out there looking out for the well-being of its citizens, and they complained to Motorola. Motorola listened, and they said, well, we need more because now we're adding IDs from other jurisdictions that come in and help us. So now we've increased it to 150K. So it's almost endless that I can put everybody in my radio system. I have definitely the surrounding jurisdictions, but we try to get even further out. DC, since especially fire and rescue, their mutual aid agreements are very strong. And if you live anywhere in the border of the counties, you know that mutual aid is seamless. So if you're in Bailey's Crossroads and you're in need of medical attention and the medic unit at Bailey's Crossroads isn't available, it's automatic that Arlington or Alexandria. So it cuts down time. We also have CAD to CAD, so they're seeing this stuff. So we have an excellent system here. Very fortunate for us in the NCR to have that. I don't know. I've been stuck in this bubble here all my life. I don't know if you went somewhere else, if it would be the same or how much of a delay for somebody to pick up a phone to say, we need to borrow your medic unit over here. Please send one. Affiliation. So what I can see in my system is radios that come on. So remember I told you about the aliases and the IDs. That's called affiliation. When it talks to that control channel, when you turn this radio on, it talks to the control channel. It says, my ID is this. I want to be on police dispatch 1. I'm just going to be listening. And the system says, okay, you're allowed to be here. Okay, this is the talk group you're going to listen to. Please dispatch 1. And that's all that's. Now, when I go to transmit, generally you hear a quick beep on this. Let me see if I can get this loud enough. In that little second, the data burst sends out information to the radio system saying, I am radio 3160232. I want to be on the radio project channel, and I want to transmit a message. So that control channel says, okay, you're allowed to be here. And now it has to tell all the other radios that are on that talk group, on that channel, hey, listen up. There's an incoming transmission, and it assigns a frequency out of our 20 frequencies. All that happened in that little second. So affiliation, that's why it's important. So we see that. Some of the security features that we have is we can disable radios. So if we get a radio causing harm, interference, or a radio that gets in the hands of a bad guy, we can disable that radio remotely. And I had a case a couple of weeks ago where an individual roamed into or I should say wandered into a fire station, picked up a radio and walked out. So I heard it on the radio because, again, I'm always with radios around me. And I was just waiting for the phone call to kill that radio. And in the meantime, I was watching it. The person stayed on, amazingly, the person stayed on a channel that didn't have a lot of radio traffic. And no radio traffic at all. I don't know what they were doing or if they knew what they were doing with the radio. But I watched them, and then I got the command to kill the radio, or the request, I'm sorry, and I killed the radio. And it was just like that. Now they have a break. And they recovered the radio that night. And that same night, a couple hours, they wanted me to bring it back alive, and it was a matter of sending a command, and the radio was back alive. So let's see here. So some statistics on this radio system. So today, before I left the office at 14:27, at 2:27 p.m., I looked at the system. I took a picture, and I had 91 talk groups, 91 channels that were active on the system. There were 1,336 affiliations. That means 1,336 radios were on the system. While I was watching that, it was fluctuating. So it actually dropped down to 1,333. But the point is, I'm able to get into the system and see system activity live. And as radios were turning on, that number increased. As they were turning off, that number was decreasing. And the same thing with talk groups. If everybody went off of a talk group, or somebody was no longer on that talk group, then my number would drop. Airtime and push to talks, PTTs. If I use that, it's push to talks per hour. So today from 12 to 1, these are just some statistics to tell you how busy this trunk radio system is. And I wish I thought of this and had the date, but you remember a couple of summers ago, I think it was in May, we had a really bad fire day in Fairfax County, and we had the old folks home in Centerville catch on fire. The bank that's right across the street from where I live in here burnt down. There was another fire that was going on, and it was one of those, I think it was a dry and breezy day. It was so bad that I'm in Fair Lakes, and the Walmart over here, because I walked over and looked at the fire, I had Loudoun County fire engines in the parking lot over there. So our units were all over the place. We had units, again, this is important for the interoperability. We had other units from other counties coming in to help us out, to back us up. And with that being said, I wish I had captured that data, because I would have loved to seen how many radios, how busy the system would have been that particular day. But today, from 12 to 1300, 12 to 1 p.m., I had 531 PTTs, pushes of the buttons. on the radios. And the total airtime in seconds was 2,985.2, just in that hour. Total airtime for 24 hours, and I did yesterday to get a full day. So number of push to talks for the 22nd yesterday was 5,613. Airtime was 43,759 seconds. So again, it emphasizes, it doesn't seem like a lot, or maybe it seems a lot to me. I really don't look at it that way. But again, our transmissions are different. They're very brief, 10-4 sometimes, and that's all that's to it. So all those clicks, that's a lot, but you got to take into account that we're also a jurisdiction that uses mobile data terminals. So some transmissions aren't carried across the radio. Like when I was growing up and I was working at some, in the volunteer fire and rescue, every transmission was over the air because we didn't have computers in the vehicles. I also ran a calls and push to talks by month. So we did June of 21, or last month, rather. So the total for the month was 121,710 push to talks. And so far in July, we're at 91,427 push to talk. So maybe a little bit of an increase, even though we're not done with the month, because it's the summertime, a lot of activities and stuff are going on. So again, I was saying that our system is not drugged down. It's not heavily burdened by a lot of transmissions. So I did a snapshot of the week of 7/16 through 7/23. Average use was 2.2%, with a maximum of 6% of the system resources being utilized. That's pretty good. The week before that, a little bit higher. It was 2.4 with a maximum of 9. And again, that's fluid. It depends on how busy the week are, especially in the middle of winter in January. It's probably going to slow a lot down. It's warm out there and everybody's doing all kinds of crazy things because it's warm. So we used to have 64K. Now we have 150K. But I ran my numbers today. So as of today, I have 44,763 IDs and aliases. And that's the same. It would be IDs/aliases. I got 44,000, basically, let's round up 45,000 of those in our radio system here in Fairfax County. So yes, that's basically 45,000 radios if you think about it. But that also includes other jurisdictions that have shared that information. So PG County, Loudoun, Prince William, Stafford, anybody that I have asked for to put on our system, because that's another thing I do for security is I look in and see who's on our system. Why is Fredericksburg on Fairfax County system? Now, again, I don't want to be negative in that form because we do use them. They will come up for help, especially the motorcycle units. If they're doing an escort up the interstate, they may be on our system to communicate with our guys. So that's why that's important, or vice versa. If we have to send a bloodhound down there to assist them to look for that missing child, then obviously we want our officer to have radio coverage on their system down there because they're going to be out of range on our radio system unless they have one of these Apex Nexts. But they need to talk to people down there, not people up here. So that's why that's important. So we're not quite up to 64,000 radios. My count today is 44,000, but that could increase. As the population increases, more radios are born, are needed, and that number increases. And we've already seen the complaints from other jurisdictions. I mean, DC was asking me for IDs that we no longer use because they have too many on their radio system. And we said, don't worry about that. We're going to get Motorola to give us a license to increase the amount of IDs allowed on these radio systems. And that's no longer a problem. Let's see here. So I think that pretty much does us good justice on how the system is efficient being a trunk radio system. I wanted to show some of the technology that we're using. Now, we're limited to Motorola because several factors come into play. So in the NCR, Motorola had established itself well. So all these other jurisdictions have Motorola systems as well, with the exception of the feds who have Harris. There may be a few others out there, but Harris and Motorola are big user radio systems out there. So with that being said, Motorola, are very protective of their product, kind of locked us in. However, that was kind of a benefit for us because that means our radios worked the best on each other's systems. So if I take a Harris radio and operate on a Motorola system, it now, because of APCO, it should be on spot, but there are a few issues that come up, again, because it's a non-proprietary product. So, Motorola is not going to release everything out to them because that's stealing business from them. So with that being said, we were kind of stuck with Motorola. So we do have a few other vendors out there, Harris radios. I think our cash team might have some that they're playing around with. I know at the radio shop, we have samplings of Harris and Kenwood, believe it or not, P25 trunk radios. But the meat and potatoes that we use now are called Apex. And I believe that's going to be your public safety version of XPR. So we have 6,000 series radios, which I have here. So a lot of our users out there utilize this. Now, another radio that we have is a step up, is a 7,000. And I'm sorry for my lighting; it's not too good here. Maybe if I invert it, maybe in the future when we're back to in person, I can stop by and bring these, to look at and demonstrate their capability. But anyways, this is a Apex 7,000. Now it's funny, if Motorola stopped making these, they're still making these 6,000s. And by the way, the running joke was a 6,000 costs $6,000, a 7,000 costs $7,000. But Motorola stopped making 7,000s, which is weird because you would think that's your latest and greatest, but they're still making 6,000. So, form factor, they're a little bit, the 7,000 is a little bit bigger, 6,000 is a little bit smaller. The 6,000 is a single band radio. This 7,000 is a dual band radio. And when you order these radios, you can get it to match what you need. Now, Fairfax County chose VHF 800. However, they do have some out there in their fleet that are UHF and 800. So when you purchase this, you can, tell them what you need. The next thing that they have, which I don't have, is an 8,000. We are looking about replacing our fleet of radios. Now, Fairfax County, the Department of Information Technology, manages the devices. We own the devices, but then they're assigned to the different public safety agencies, and they do the programming and they manage them. So with that being said, we're tasked with determining what the next product is going to be, and likely it's going to be an 8,000. So that's how Motorola does it. 7,000, 8,000. I think there's even a 9,000 out there. So the radio mobile version of these matches the number. So 7,000, then your mobile would be 7,500, just like XPR. I guess it's I get a 5,000 range, actually. I guess it's not the same with XPR. I think mobiles are in the 5,000 range, but your portables are depending on what frequency band they are. Well, I guess that would be the same with the mobile. I'm not really sure with the mobiles. All I have is XPR 6500s, 6550s, and that's it. I'm looking at getting something in the future. I'm doing some watching on eBay. So our next technology that we're going to is LTE. Now, we already mentioned that with the push to talk, but this is actually a smartphone radio. It's called the Apex Next. Moto Turbo's version of this is a Ion, what I understand. But on this Apex Next radio, you're basically looking at a radio and a smartphone together, except I don't have voice for telephone service on this. So what I can do is I can roam outside of Fairfax County, and I can connect to my radio system via LTE. As a matter of fact, I can take the antenna off, which is sinful in the radio world. That's bad for the radio if it will transmit. You heard it beep there. Let me go back to my radio shop channel. So I have taken the RF antenna off, and now I am on LTE, and I can key up radio shop test. So I'm hearing myself on the radio here, but I'm transmitting on this Apex via LTE, cellular service. It's FirstNet AT&T. So we have determined, we have deployed these, I should say our public safety, our law enforcement have deployed these in buildings where radio coverage is poor. Inside of some of these fortresses that we have in Fairfax County. But they want their customers or the people that occupy those buildings to have cell phone coverage. Of course, that's where these execs are communicating back at headquarters in LA or China or wherever. They're going to do that on a cell phone. So, of course, they have cell phone coverage in this building. So that's what we're able to do. They also deploy these when they have units that are doing transports to the different mental institutions in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They no longer have to carry a SIRS radio in low band, 39.5 megahertz, to talk to locals. That's what Virginia uses as a inter-mutual aid radio system for the different sheriff's departments to talk to each other throughout the Commonwealth. Well, they no longer have to put a mag mount antenna, a Kenwood low band radio in their cruiser. They can just drive around with this, and they can get back to their own dispatcher up here in Fairfax County. I was using it. I went to my family's in Covington, Virginia, which is west of Roanoke, before West Virginia, and I was connected down there, and they could not believe, that's the middle of the country down there, so they only get one call a month, if that. They could not believe how busy the dispatch was up here, and it was constant chatter with all these calls. So that's what you can do with the technology now. I can connect to the radio system from almost anywhere where I have LTE coverage. But let's bring it back into Fairfax. One thing I did forget to mention, but this would be good to segue into that, is coverage in Fairfax County. We have 13 RF sites. We actually have more sites, if you would, but RF, it's only 13. We have the brains of the radio system that's considered a site, and our consoles that we have is considered a site. And that also includes our little jurisdictions that we have under our umbrella: Herndon, Town of Vienna, City of Fairfax. The console systems for them counts as a site. But the RF sites, we require a total of 13 to provide radio coverage in our county. Brendan, were you saying something?
Oh, I was just thinking out loud. That's licensing, correct?
Correct. So,
yeah.
So, of course, we have to license for each one of those sites, and it has to be appropriate, the type of emission and so forth, and the address of location. So I think it's broken down. When you look up, if you were to look up our licensing, it's broken down into different groups. And as a matter of fact, we took some of our frequencies from our analog system to use on public safety, and we had to go through the FCC and get those redone for emissions for P25, for digital emissions. So yes, and that information is on the FCC, posted on the FCC. It's free information, public information. So 13 sites cover Fairfax County to provide our public safety personnel with portable radio coverage in building. Now, in comparison, and this is probably good for anybody that's into building out radio systems. In comparison, our analog system, which has been around for a very long time, but again, it's sunsetting. That system is built for street coverage because that was going to be for radios for the most part that are in school buses and connector buses, in the park authority vehicles. They were outside. They weren't inside people's basements or homes dealing with issues. So with that being said, they are limited to 7 sites. They don't have as many sites as the public safety radio system does. They share a few, but let's take Great Falls, for example. On the analog system, it could get a little bit edgy up there driving around because they don't have a site. Now, public safety has a site up there at the Great Falls fire station in the backyard. And so, again, you're looking at, when you're designing a system, are you designing it for portable coverage and a percentage? You want 95% portable coverage. And that just means more money found to fund that. And, well, I mean, that's all that I have for you, really, to cover on the public safety radio system. It's an overview of what we have here in Fairfax County. The one thing that I want to emphasize that's important about these radios, and in my position for interoperability manager, is with all these systems being Motorola, I have in this radio and all these radios, I can talk on systems all the way to Fredericksburg. I can go out west to Fauquier, Culpeper, Rappahannock. Up north, I can go into Maryland. Let's see, Montgomery County, Frederick, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, and that pretty much covers the entire, boundaries and everything in between. So that's the importance of us having these radios. So if we do go and help out our fellow first responders in the jurisdiction next to us, or even the jurisdiction that are several, or a jurisdiction that are several jurisdictions over, we can do that. For instance, our helicopter went out last night to Clark County, Virginia, to look for a missing boater in the river up there. The circumstance there, though, is they're not on these radios, but the helicopter has access to their stuff by having a dual band radio. So I kind of focus on these jurisdictions by saying I can communicate with down to Falk here. If I go to my dual band radio, it even opens up further. I could go to Warren County or Clark County because they're still VHF conventional out there. So that's the importance of having these radios, is so that we can help each other out.